Hey there, I'm Christopher Schoenwald, and welcome to Life as a show intently focused on helping people find their professional pathway by exploring and unearthing the details of jobs from around the world. Hey, how are you doing? Before we get started today, I do have a favor to ask of all of you. I did start a channel over on YouTube in the last year and a half or so. And yeah, I'm really trying to promote that. And the reason being is I think the content that I'm putting out here, we're doing all right with some of these guests that are coming on. And I think it deserves to be put in front of more people. And one of the best ways, of course, of doing that is through a platform like YouTube. Now, if you do interact with these videos on YouTube, that algorithm loves it. And that's the only way that it knows to continually share that content, put it in front of more people. So yeah, I could be a little bit biased here, but I think, finding out about some of these careers is great for young people. It's great for mid-career professionals. If you have a second, head on over to YouTube, life as a ... That's where you can find it. And yeah, like or subscribe. It would help a ton. Well, on to the show. To all those aspiring entrepreneurs out there, or heck, even people who are just looking for a boost of motivation, perhaps even inspiration, I think you're really going to like this episode. I've got this guest today who started this passion-based business, something that he'd always been kind of longing to do and thinking about. But the thing is here is, aside from it becoming this really, really successful operation, he's doing it in a market other than where he grew up. In fact, in a market where he doesn't even speak the main language there all that well, self-admittedly speaking. So I think that really kind of colors this and gives us this really interesting angle to explore it all from. And I've got to add, the business that he's involved with is just fun to talk about. What he does is he produces and manufactures, campervans. Probably you're thinking like those old 1960s VWs touring across the nation, across countries. Yeah, kind of like that with a modern Japanese twist. So yeah, the conversation itself, we get into all of that, what that is like, some of the trials and tribulations, some of the reward, and a lot of other interesting and engaging stories. But let me more formally introduce him to you and we can get started. Jared Campion is a man on a mission. As the founder of Dream Drive, a Tokyo-based company that builds homes on wheels, or premium campervans, he's passionate about providing travelers with everything they need to explore Japan on their own terms. Now, located on the outskirts of Tokyo, Dream Drive's full-scale workshop offers a variety of campervan models to choose from. But what really sets them apart is their commitment to Japanese craftsmanship, resulting in spacious modern designs and cutting-edge technology that have quickly earned the company a reputation as a disruptor in the local market. Further, each campervan is carefully crafted by hand to provide a unique character and personality that you won't find in mass-produced, ready-made products. Now, rewinding a bit here, Jared's passion for van life was born out of a lifetime of adventure and appreciation for the outdoors, split between formative years spent in the UK and Australia. And when he moved to Japan, he was struck by the country's natural beauty, safety, and of course, the wonderful hot spring culture, but was kind of surprised to find that van life culture was severely underdeveloped. And it was kind of this realization that sparked the idea for his company. Japan had all the makings of a successful campervan culture, it simply needed the means. Enter Jared and his enterprise, Dream Drive. So with all that stated, here's my conversation with Jared Campion. Yeah, so welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, well, thanks. How you doing yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. I gotta say, right out of the gate here, I'm definitely a big fan of the work that you do. I've got this sort of like secret dream. I guess it's not gonna be so much of a secret now, but one day, maybe having one of these things that you produce, these camper vans. So yeah, really excited for this talk, and yeah, I couldn't be more thrilled to get into it with you.
Thanks for inviting me on, Chris.
Well, I've got this first segment lined up, and it's something called Coloring Wikipedia. As my listeners know, it's basically a segment. I just read off a definition of what the person does, or sometimes like a word associated with the line of work that they're involved with or their business. And I have you down here for van life. And I know it's a broad sort of concept here, but obviously it's fitting for what you do. And let me just read that off. And afterwards, maybe you just comment and add your insights. Does it sound okay?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Alrighty, here we go. Van life. Van life is a lifestyle of living in a vehicle, full or part-time. The names are compound words that derive from the fact that it's typically done in a van that has been modified with basic amenities such as house batteries, solar panels, a bed platform, some form of toilet, sink, and storage space. Some van dwellers live this lifestyle by choice while seeking freedom, self-sufficiency, and mobility without paying for conventional stationary housing. An idealized version has been popularized through social media with the hashtag van life. Yeah, a bit of a mouthful. First take, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think it's cool. I think van life has given fresh, points to a very old industry of RVs and motorhomes, which has been
Yeah.
around since I grew up with it as a child. And I think it's just for younger generation seeing the potential of building a way of living inside a vehicle and then taking it anywhere they want to go. So yeah, I think it's great. A lot of the vehicles we're building are not for people to live in, although we do have people live in the vehicles. But I think van life's a great phrase, and I think it's really it's a way of life, and people live this way, especially great nomads for a while. So it's not going anywhere, I think, too. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely. And I like how right out of the gate you mentioned like the historical aspect to it as well. I mean, it has been around for ages. I mean, like I have like just imagery of an old VW, like what that meant in the 60s, right? And
yeah, yeah,
like you said, there's a lifestyle attached to all of that back in the day. And it's interesting how it's been like reinvented and new lifestyles and new ways of living attached to the modern version of it.
I love to look at the history of it too, because you've got like gypsies who have for years been traveling around with caravans pulled by horses. My family background's actually gypsy background, so like for
Oh, no
generations
way.
living that way, like hence Campion.
Yeah.
And if you look at the when the vehicles came about, and even if you look at Volkswagen campervan, like the iconic like campervans they did, that came about after the war, after World War II. British officer in Germany. They were looking for what to do with these big factories, and he wanted to customize a little bed kit into one of those classes. And then from there, it became this huge movement in the 60s. But yeah, they've been making these things for years, and yeah, and they've been super popular. So yeah, it's not everybody has had such an opportunity to have one, but now it's becoming more commonplace, and more people are finding ways to do it, even if it's just putting a bed in the back of a car. There's lots of ways to expensive and cheap to experience that lifestyle. So yeah,
Yeah, totally. And like I said before too, I mean, it's interesting how in the past maybe it attached itself, the lifestyle attached itself to a movement, say within the 60s, a little bit more free and, just kind of going around. But now, like where we're at and this whole rise of remote work and everything else, I mean, it's sort of been, at least in Western culture, you're seeing it being attached to that to a certain degree, and a bunch of other things too. But yeah, nonetheless, pretty fascinating all the
yeah,
same.
it's a lot of potential.
Yeah. Kind of shifting over now in terms of van life within Japan, the cultural sort of element to it. I'm guessing here that there are some differences, and we're probably going to get into this in the conversation. But broadly speaking, what would you say to that?
I think first of all, Japan's got a bigger history of campervan making and manufacturing than people expect. For example, there's more campervans or motorhomes made in Japan than are made in Australia, which is a famous market for campervans and motorhomes. So
Wow, that does sort of
yeah, so there's a lot of manufacturers. I mean, if you think about, I should say, like Australia's famous for caravans, like trailers, and it's
okay.
far
Yeah.
out competing Japan. There's few trailers made in Japan, but when it comes to motorhomes and campervans, it's a massive market. It's been around for a while, but there are a few key differences. Like generally, Japan's a place which has got narrow, tight streets. They're not looking to do these massive rigs that you'll see in America. Also, there's onsen or bathhouses all over, so it doesn't. There's not as much need to have a bathroom inside the vehicle. Also, a lot of the vehicles they produce here aren't so tall, especially when it comes to van. So there's not much standing room inside, which isn't actually a big problem when people actually use a van. But when people are choosing one, they like to imagine themselves standing up. So we're kind of manufacturing with the products we've got here. But Japan makes a lot of great vehicles, if it's Toyotas or Fusos, Isuzus, Nissans, vans, and trucks. So there's lots of great platforms to build upon. And a lot of makers are very creative. One maker might make 30 different varieties of campervan, and yeah, so there's lots of different options and weird and wonderful sizes. And there is a popular following for the campervans from Japan overseas too. People are starting to export them over to other markets as well. So yeah, so it's the vehicles are different. They're very compact. They're very much about making the most of a small space by changing or transforming the space inside from eating to sleeping to dining to workstation nowadays. More people doing work on the road. So yeah, so there's a lot of flexibility in the designs here to make the most of a tiny space. So yeah, they're pretty fun.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd imagine as well, I mean, it's just one partly the Japanese craftsmanship as well. I mean, that's always a bit of, an allure to foreign buyers, I would assume, too. I mean, the reliability and whatnot. But then even beyond that, like just as you said, I mean, the size being a little more compact, like within, say, Western markets, let's say within America, like you have these massive, massive motorhomes that
Yeah.
come with massive, massive price tags too, right? Like, that's a big difference versus say what's being produced here. Like it makes it more on a level at which just about anyone, well, almost anyone could eventually perhaps save up for one of these things or purchase one. So I think that also sort of distinguishes it, I would assume, at least.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's becoming interesting too. Like my parents have two camper vans, for example. They're retired, and so they have different sizes for different kind of adventures. And
Yeah.
yeah, you have the American size with the big pullouts, and it's basically a house. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, basically a house on wheels. And then you've got, but they still like the compact ones. So if it kind of limits where you can go, you're very much limited to go to like RV parks, which are getting busy nowadays because it's become such a big thing. Some places they have to book a year out to get these places to get a spot. So yeah, it's all if people want freedom and flexibility, then the smaller size ones let them kind of travel where they want to go on a whim or follow nice weather. I'm really excited to see how the market's going to develop in the future and see what we can do as a Japanese manufacturer, which is now starting to get into export of the products overseas. I think we're really excited to see what the future has in store for us. So
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Well, maybe we could slide into another segment here, a day in the life segment. And, as the name implies here, you being the person who's kind of like heading all of this up, I understand that you do have a partner, but kind of like interesting to hear, what your role is right now and how it's evolved since, say, the startup when you first put it into the market and what you're involved with right now as far as day to day or week to week sort of activities.
yeah, sure. I mean, from the start, like I started by making the first camper van in my driveway, and then just the first one. And then I hired some people who made the next one, and I was focused on building the rental business and hiring. I mean, a lot of it's been hiring people, and I start something and maybe make a style or a brand, or like, and then get somebody in to come and manage it and develop it, and then getting into manufacturing and hiring like more skilled carpenters. And my role always evolves over time. But like I think one of my background has been in recruitment in Japan. I was a recruiter for a lot of the time before doing this. I don't really have a campervan industry background before starting Dream Drive. So I'm naturally always looking for good people to bring
The
on.
business, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so forth. So yeah, now I'm it's an interesting moment right now. I'm looking over the new products we're developing, looking over the marketing. We're at this point like we're shutting down the rental service, which we started as a rental business. So I'm actually personally just managing that because we don't want to hire somebody to do that role anymore. So I'm kind of just dealing with the final customers in that as that winds down. And my other big focus is now personally looking over how we're going to start up Australia and New Zealand. So finding for sometimes it starts very small, me doing it hands on, and then getting someone put them into that role, and then allowing them just to take it forward from there. So yeah, it's definitely yeah. So in terms of a day to day, it's always very different. I don't
Lots of different hats.
Yeah, lots of different hats. And I'm putting someone in charge now, the operations person. So I'm not as I was always involved in everything. Now I'm a little bit more CEO. I would be a CEO without having to be.
managing
So
it.
like it sounds ridiculous to say that for a 25 person company, but like,
Ah, no, I hear
but
you.
also my language abilities aren't great. Like I can speak Japanese, but I slow everything down and I make everyone go at my speed. So I'm kind of trying to and sometimes there's miscommunications. So I'm trying to step away a little bit from the day-to-day operations of that so I can focus more on the future and how we're going to grow things moving forward.
Well, it sounds like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but like at least initially, and for like a lot of businesses, I guess when you're starting out, when you're the first person in the business, right? And it's a startup, you're doing just about everything. And
Yeah.
you're setting the processes for, laying that groundwork for others if the thing does evolve to that point, right? And the way
Right.
you just sort of described it like that would seem to be the path that Dream Drive has been on, where you're wearing all these different hats, you're doing a bit of the marketing, you're doing a bit of the operations, you're doing a bit of the
Yeah.
sales and service. And once those things get established, then the processes are there. It becomes easier to bring somebody on and say, okay, well, this is how we do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a big difference between startup and like a corporation because like I don't think a CEO of a corporation would ever do that or get their hands it's like beneath them. But like if you start the company, and I think that's the hard thing to adapt from is going from being the founder who does everything to then starting to be like looking out more. And it's definitely a hard transition for me
It is,
and help
yeah.
with that. So I'm always tempted just to do it, which is actually not always the right thing to do. But I mean, I'm taking my time with it and figuring it out. But yeah, but
It's a stage.
we've got a bunch of plates we were spinning, like lots of different things. We're now trying to simplify to like be a high quality manufacturer of campervans, and focus on that. And so yeah, it can be a bit of a mess as you're trying to sort that out. So
Yeah.
we're
It's all
really
part of the
happy
journey.
with the direction. So yeah.
All right. Well, let's slide into another segment here, Jared. Something called pathways. And the aim here is to kind of show how people, get into their businesses, they get into their line of work. And oftentimes, like there's never this straight linear line. Like that's kind of the point of this segment here. People are kind of zigging and zagging, left-hand turns, right-hand turns. And off the top, I lightly introduced to listeners like how you made your way into the Japanese market. And I've researched that a little bit myself, the stories behind that. But I think it'd be interesting to hear a little bit more from you about
Sure.
that. How did you end up in Japan? Why? And why did you decide to set up shop here in terms of doing this particular line of business?
Yeah, so I came here on a working holiday visa, which is an option for Australians. So we can come here and with no real agenda and just work for a year and do teaching. And I did various jobs as a teacher. I did as in TV commercials, like background person, just having fun for a year. And I was here with my wife, who's Australian too. And we ended up just extending that visa and staying on and doing it was kind of a gap year, which became like a longer term gap decade, I guess.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me. I'm on the 1 year going on 25 year plan. So yeah, I know all
Well,
about
I
this.
think a lot of people who come to a lot of people come to Japan and they stay here because they love Japan. So it's not always the best career move. I think like it's we try and justify the career of what keeps us in Japan after
Right.
this. But like I think for me around I had children. My oldest is 12. I've got 3 kids now. And around that point I had to make more money. My wife was making she was teaching English, making more than I was. I had to quadruple my salary, so I became a recruiter, which is in Tokyo like a pretty common pathway.
Yeah, it's the other big one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, IT teaching is huge. IT and teaching can be really good if especially if people start their own company, they can do really well from that. And I've got friends who make like more than I do, just like by opening a few schools and so I was in recruitment, and from doing that I was working in advertising industry, and I really loved the advertising industry. I wanted to work in the advertising industry. I did do some projects or work in within market research a bit, doing some marketing, and I realized it was something I had the giftings for, and could do. And then I was looking to build my own business. I just had that knack where I wanted to make things happen or build something. and I was building a technology company around recruitment. Solely because I'd done recruitment, it made sense that I was a recruiter. I'm going to build software around recruitment.
Your base of knowledge, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we built this software. This is like a AI for like recruitment or something. And it did well. We had Amazon as a client. We're doing stuff, things are happening. Lots of mistakes made in how I set that business up or like how I set expectations with team. But it also made me realize like, well, if you focus on something and take it super seriously, you can make it a success. And also I realized, well, I thought at that point, well, you can also raise money for stuff too. And I thought like what is it that I really want to do? Like forget about like recruitment or what I've done. Recruitment's just something I basically did because I was in Japan and I was gifted for it. But like I grew up with campervans. I loved campervans from a young age. And I really felt like Japan would be a great place to build a campervan business. So I thought, well, I may as well just do exactly what I want to do for once and see how I go. I think I had the idea for a long time. It was in the back of my mind. I was talking about it with people and I couldn't shake it. I really think having an idea that you think is interesting and will make it and you believe in it and you talk about it and no one can talk you out of it or they try and you can, they're not talking you out of it because you've got good comebacks or like
Yeah. You talk it into existence, don't you?
yeah, I'm always worried about giving advice because I think sometimes people can be really stubborn about ideas just because they want to do something, and it can waste time, and it cannot always end up well. But I think if you've really got a passion inside of you and you want to give it a shot, you got to give it, you got to try it. But I started really small. I made a website and tested the concept, and then I made the first one of my family vehicle, and then I raised a bit of money based on the ideas I had and I took in investment from people I worked with in the past or who knew me, and then each thing led to another thing, and it got bigger and bigger, and we had real customers starting to take our vehicles out and trying them, people from overseas renting them. So it's all like little steps.
Staged.
Yeah, and for me, the big shock was when Corona hit and we lost our rental business, and I made a decision just to keep going, and that was a really stupid decision. In a way, like it was a big risk. We didn't have a rental business anymore, but I had built a small, like manufacturing business. We could sell for rental cars. We made a commitment. Screw it. Let's just become a manufacturer, design something. We had the resources then, so it's like we were starting again. But luckily, people loved the concept, and yeah, it kind of led to us being where we're at now. Yeah, which is in many ways it was like a roller coaster ride because like once you're in this business, you're in, and you've got to deliver on those vehicles you sold. So it gets bigger. The business gets bigger and bigger, and that's like manufacturing businesses. They just get big, but I think it's a great industry to work in. I love making things. I think in many ways, like I love working with Japanese craftsmen. They're just so reliable and they deliver. So like them delivering on the quality has meant that more people want to order it. So it's been a snowball, but a good snowball, which is I'm very happy to be like running on top of, you know.
Yeah. It sounds like it. It sounds like it's been staged and it's just been like those steps, right? From those baby steps, at least initially, and then you just keep building. You pick up a little bit more knowledge here. You get a little bit more in the way of resources, connections, networks, customers, and it just sort of, like you said, snowballs is probably the right word for it.
Yeah, and it's a real business too. Like it's not something you can't really fake manufacturing because it's not like software where you can raise some money but like it's manufacturing. There's so much things at stake. You've really got to like deliver on each product, on each timeline. So it's a very like down to earth kind of business, which kind of rewarding in that way.
Not only that, I mean, like Japanese consumers are known for being a little bit finicky, and the products that you put into the market, they better meet expectations because otherwise, like they're not going to be accepted. They're not going to be successful. So I think it's always a bit of a mark especially when foreign-led enterprises are entering into the Japanese market and not only launching here, but then having a degree of success or sustained success. It kind of really tells a lot. At least from my opinion of being here for this amount of time.
It's actually interesting on that point. Like, so I've been meeting a lot of people in manufacturing and people who build products and so forth. I was talking to a guy recently about a British company which supplies like parts which go in cars, and they have manufacturing in Japan. A lot of the Japanese companies here want them to manufacture parts locally so we can do just in time. So near one of their factories, and they can pick up the products and put them
Fits
in.
right in, yeah.
And this company, like, they manufacture in the UK, they manufacture in Japan, and the quality in Japan is way better. Even though it's like a newer factory, it's not been around. The quality is way higher quality, but it's not always as fast. And I think that's their issue, because like the Japanese craftsmen will pride themselves on delivering a great product every time, and then it's like getting the speed up, which is a challenge for us. So there's a balance there, but like, yeah, a lot of manufacturing companies who end up manufacturing in Japan, the product just naturally gets better and has high quality. So as Ben questions, how can you, like Toyota does, take that like style of manufacturing and then manufacture in Thailand or other markets as well, which is like the secret sauce in a way.
All right. Well, this might be a nice time to sort of like get into this other segment, a Q&A discovery, and kind of continue this back and forth. But you'd mentioned this already as far as like the details of what your business is all about. I mean, you use major manufacturers like Toyota, Nissan as the platform for these camper vans, right? And then you customize and you build from that. But maybe you could add a little bit more detail about that process and what your true offering is, just to make sure that's crystal clear for listeners.
Yeah, sure. So we generally take a brand new Toyota Hiace camper van, which is stripped down. So we get it unregistered straight from Toyota. So we have a special relationship with them. And then we modify the inside. We do insulation. We put in wire harnesses. We put in the flooring, the walls, the electrical system, the water systems. And then we also cut into the body and might install an air conditioner or a fan. And yeah, and then there's also exterior aesthetics, like obviously changing wheels, maybe repainting the exterior. That's generally what we're doing. It's basically building like it's like we have a skeleton and we change everything from inside. So that's generally what we do. But if we're exporting a product, we can't export brand new ones because of it's something that's controlled. So we need to get 1-year-old vehicles and then do the same thing. So when it comes to export, we might not do a brand new one, but generally we're doing brand new products. In the past we've also done built the frames as well in the past. So we've gone through that and tried it, and we've also done truck-based campers. We did a big project with Mitsubishi Fuso last year called the Nomad, which was a crazy build of a transformer type truck. So yeah, and various other ones for brands like Koala. We've built some special, or Milwaukee, built some special camper vans. But yeah, it's generally doing van conversion basically. So
really quick question here. I mean, it strikes me as a bit, I don't know, surprising or odd to a certain extent that some of these big manufacturers aren't doing this. They don't have lines, or maybe they do. They're just not doing it in the same way that you're doing it.
Oh, they do. So yeah, no, like Toyota does make some. Well, I mean, Toyota, it's Japan, so there's like massive organization umbrella with lots of different pieces in it.
Subsidiary companies and stuff. Yeah.
So one of like Toyota Mobility does do some builds in Tokyo, but it's like Campervan is it's like a house. It's hard to build a brand. There's going to be a few makers, and a lot of people want the specialty ones. And like Toyota's what they're making is very basic. So some people like it, but it's not competing with what we're doing. But we do have competition, like as a more serious camper van product, like end of a business. But yeah, it's kind of,
it's more stock, I guess. Like it's one sort of flavor basically is what they're producing. Yeah. Whereas what you're putting out there is fully customized. Like you can choose this, or to have this, not to have it. Would that be sort of accurate?
Yeah, it's accurate. And it's also more of a serious vehicle you could use for like extended trips. And sometimes what they're putting is just basically, I mean, Mercedes does this with the Marco Polo. It's the seats go flat and there might be an attachment for a table, but it's a very basic few features. We'll see. I mean, who knows what happens in the future too. We might even go into more as things get bigger, as our dealership network expands. we're looking at like what else can we do, or what other things can we offer, or so. I mean, I think that goes. There's opportunities on both sides of that. But yeah, I think makers like Toyota have to be careful. Like thinking too, like they've got a lot of partners, or any truck or van company. They usually want to focus on a few products, and they make money from us buying their vehicles and converting them too. But usually they want to keep keep a good health relationship with manufacturers. So anyway.
Another question here I'd be curious about, and I think you did touch on this already lightly, about, I guess, some of the differences, say, within the Japanese market versus, say, camper van lifestyle within Western markets. Some of the amenities, some of the things, some of the builds that you would have. I think you mentioned how, like, and I can attest to this too. I mean, Japan, you have this wonderful hot spring culture. You have public restrooms everywhere. So that would sort of like, you wouldn't necessarily need like the toilets and maybe even sinks to a certain extent within the camper vans themselves. Whereas maybe within Western markets, those would be, things that you would absolutely have in there. Is there anything else that would sort of separate the van, say, within European markets or North American markets versus what?
Well, I think one of the big difference in Japan is they try and put a lot more into a small van. So they might have a small hiace van, and they'll have 9 seats, and they try and makes beds for like 8 people. So it's like really sardines. Like a lot of the time, a customer would have they're looking for one vehicle which they can use daily driver, take their kids around, and then go camping. So they try and just fit more in. Where the European ones, it might be a 2-seater and it's a big van. Where here there's like no way they're going to buy a vehicle that size without having at least like 5-6 seats. So usually it's about packing more into a small space, which is kind of interesting to people from overseas when they buy it. So, wow, look at all these things we can do with a small vehicle. It's got the features of like a bigger one, but it's so compact, easy to drive, cheap on gas, on gas and so forth. So yeah, I think that's a big one.
Okay. So would it also sort of like encapsulate that idea where I think you just said, where in Japan, they envision it as like a daily drive. Like they could be, like you said, picking up their kids and, using it for just everyday things. Whereas like maybe in these Western markets where it's more like, this is for camping. This is what we do on the weekends or in the summer or whenever, when we have time off. Is it it's that line as well?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Yeah.
Got it. This other question here, I guess, like getting back to this notion of building this business, I'd imagine like it must have been a bit daunting, at least initially. And there's probably some trepidation of, am I going to do this or not? I mean, the passion was clearly there, as you sort of mentioned, but like when push came to shove, I'd be curious about where you were at mentally. Where like, can I pull this off? Like, what is this like? Am I going to be able to get this thing off the ground and moving forward? Maybe we could return to those sort of feelings as well, like that entrepreneurial sort of memory or journey.
I think for me, this was my like, from being in Japan this long, and I wanted to do something which I felt would be like gave me a reason to be in Japan, like something which is like made like you combining Japanese craftsmanship with like the amazing vehicles, and and for me this was like my big, like I wanted to give it a real like one time I just wanted to go all in on an idea and really see like what would happen. And yeah, so for me I kind of signed up knowing this is going to be like a lot of hard work and yeah, I think it was a good bet in many ways. Like a lot in some, the industry is expanding, it's getting better. But yeah, my mental state was really, I guess I was looking for something, and I think I had a lot of things I wanted to prove, and and I think now looking back at bookending the mental state, I also think it's like, I think you have to be really careful about like how much you bite off to, because it is like you have to be careful about making sure you get good sleep and you've been healthy. And I think I think it's so important trying to be fruitful in all things at all times, like trying to make sure you've got good sleep, good time with your family, good time to relax. I think you definitely get that a sense of accomplishment from work. Yeah, I think and sometimes if you look at my photos, sometimes I'm getting a bit more my weight's coming on a little bit.
The stress, the pressure.
Yeah. So it's something that I don't think people understand the challenges which come across when you do it. But there's a lot of reward. I'm so happy I did what I did. I'm also so lucky. There's been a few times in the past when it was really sketchy. I mean, recently we've been expanding, we've been growing, things have been good. We've learned a lot, but we've learned a lot from our mistakes. And and like Corona put us in a really difficult situation. So it's like some mistakes are like it's just like you're just dealing with a new reality. So yeah, it can definitely take take its toll. I think it's good to try do it at least once. Like in the future, I don't know if in the future I would take on something like that again. I'm happy to be in the place we are now with a business.
Yeah, it's a time and place sort of thing, isn't it? And I also kind of like, when I was just listening to you speak about this, I kind of get the vibes that you are in that sort of like reflective state right now, where you can kind of look back on it and be like, well, this was really difficult. This was a challenging moment. And I think that says something, because oftentimes, like, I think it's easy to kind of just get caught up in the moment, of like, okay, what's next? What's next? What do I have to do next? What do I have to do next? And if you can kind of like catch yourself, whether you're, a professional working for a company or an entrepreneur like yourself, and you stop, you pause, you kind of look back for a second, like, okay, well, that was a challenge, that was difficult, but then also the reward that kind of came out of it. It's sort of like, you can derive a lot of satisfaction from that. And that's the other part of what I'm sort of like getting from this conversation from you, is you have sort of both sides of that, where like, yeah, you can recognize some of the difficulties that you did face, but then also like what that has meant to you in terms of how you're feeling right now in this,
Well, I think for me, like when I started the business of Dream Drive, I really wanted it to become a big business and like be a manufacturer, like, and sell vehicles overseas. So it's a bigger goal than just me in a way. And like, that's my priority, is to make it bigger, make it better. So
is that still the dream? I mean, to make it as big as it can be? Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. But not necessarily for me always to be like in the driver's seat in that way. Like I think as a mission of what Dream Drive is and where I want it to go, I think that's what it should be. And I want to see it like go as far as it can. It's like there's a book, I think it's called The Founder's Dilemma, where when you found a business, it's so hard for you to separate yourself from it, and you always,
it's your baby. Yeah,
you're in there and like you're worried about all the different pieces. But like an analogy I got from my last boss, I used to work for, Dominic Carter, was like, there's like a business is like a movie. Like you've got directors, stars, and you've got executive producers. The producer comes up with a vision of, this is what we want to do, this is what I make, and you get to choose a director, and then the director gets to kind of, if you get Wes Anderson as your director, you know what movie it's going to be. You can't expect him to make like a Marvel movie. And also stars are very different, and like they've got what they want. They've got all those things. I think when you first start a company, you're all of those people. You have to do all those different jobs. Over time, you kind of move. Like I started a business, I'm a founder. I'm ultimately the executive producer in a way, where I get to like maybe decide who's the director. But it's really hard to let go and let them direct. And I think that's like, you kind of got to like, you get to choose the best person for it, but you got to give people freedom to make it better. And that's something I think, like, if you want to make it a great movie, which gets bigger and better, or goes on to sequels and becomes a big thing, I think that's what I'm now trying to figure out. Like, okay, here's where I want this to go. Here's what I'm good at and what my abilities are. And like maybe concepting vehicles, understanding the market, looking over different places. So then it's about figuring out what directors you get inside the business to like do it, and then how the sometimes you got to jump in and be like as an executive producer, you got to like change things, right? Like you might lose a director when you do that. So it's definitely but for me, like Dream Drive being what it is, like we've got like 25, we're going to be 30 in a few weeks. People, like, it's a lot of lives and people like who I love, who are like really great craftsmen and really skilled, like gifted people. So it's like I want them to get better lives and things to get better too. And I think that's like the big thing I really want to do in Japan moving forward, is really change the lives of ordinary craftsmen who work for us and give them a better life. Because I think that's something that's kind of missing in Japan, is the respect and the love for the craftsmen who are so gifted. They can kind of get exploited a lot. Are just made to go faster, faster, faster. But like, I was lucky enough to grow up in the UK at like in a small town of Uttoxeter, which had like UK's most successful manufacturer, JCB, which is an excavator company, similar to Caterpillar. And it like my family all worked there, and they changed the lives of all those people who worked there. They paid well, they had good work-life balance, and that the whole town prospered, and people were coming into our town from the cities, or busing in from the cities around the area. And I really felt like that's a view of what a great manufacturer can do. And yeah, I kind of want to create that kind of atmosphere in the future and deliver more camper vans. And I think if we can keep those growing for sales and like distribution globally, and creating great jobs and looking after craftsmen so we can hire more people. If we do those two things well, then Dream Drive's doing what I want it to do. And I'll find my place within that to make sure that it keeps doing that. But yeah.
I hear you. I really like that. I mean, I love that. It speaks to that point of maturity as well as you go through the stages. And like when you first start a company, you have like these visions of this is what I want out of it. And then as you get into it further, it sort of like evolves. It's interesting. I think like the whole world of entrepreneurship, where the deeper you get into it, the more successful you become, the more you're almost like giving back. And that becomes like a bigger part of it, or it's just as important part of like the success that you're deriving from it, And I think that's the point that you were speaking of right there. All right, well, this might be a nice point to shift on over into this water cooler story segment. And this is a point at which I just sort of ask, guests to indulge listeners with the story related to their work. I mean, it could be anything. It could be a story of triumph. It could be a story of wherever you want to go with this.
That's a hard one. I think like, if I think of heartache, I really think about when we had like the rental business and everything was going great, and we had our calendar was starting to book out of like people taking dates, and we were expanding our workshop and everything. And then Corona hit, and we refunded everybody, which is like in some ways stupid, but like I just felt that was the right thing to do, like just to do it. But then we were in a really bad spot for us personally. That was like one of the tough moments where we made that decision to keep going, keep trying, because like it was either bankrupt the business or you may as well keep going at that point. Like, and see what else you can do.
Yeah,
like you can't
exactly,
really,
right?
Like you can't really do that in Japan. Like it affects everything. It affects my house, and like it's not like one of Donald Trump's businesses which can go bankrupt and he's fine. Like in Japan, like you're done. Yeah, you're tied in. So I think like that was really hard. And we also we kept we managed to start hiring Japanese craftsmen at that point. So we actually hired more people because we couldn't find good craftsmen before that, but suddenly companies were letting good employees go at that time too. So we managed to hire a couple of really good guys, and we thought like, let's see what happens. So that was really hard. And at that point I was somebody who would never show emotion or like let people know or talk about it. I just kept it all inside and kept going and figured it out. That was really hard. And then you kind of juxtapose that with right now when we've got the markets back, the like lots of customers coming from overseas, and I'm dealing with those customers still. As I keep the team focused on selling and manufacturing. And today we had another customer from Singapore who's just saying, this is the most amazing experience. We love it. And I can't believe you guys are shutting us down. But like, we're shutting it down anyway. So it's like we have the opportunity, we have all the customers, we have super busy business, and we're shutting down a successful rental business to focus on the things. I think that's like a really it's really weird to see like why, and many parts of me hates that we're shutting this down, but I know it's decision to like why would you shut down a good business that people love?
It's a sign of like the business maturing, right? And it's just a strategic decision, obviously. Yeah. And it says a lot of, I guess, the stage of where you're at, I suppose, right? Like if you're still struggling in the early days, I mean, you certainly wouldn't be doing something like that. But you reach this point in maturity where the business does itself, well, yeah, you're able to take those liberties and make these strategic decisions, even though that in the moment you're like, ooh, I don't know if this is the right one. But you built it to this point and you've had some success, or quite a bit of success. So yeah.
And I think like another interesting story, how we got our venue, because I built like the first camper van at my house, just outside. I'll send you some pictures, and we just like I didn't know where to build it. I didn't have space. I just wanted to test the concept, so I just did it at my house. I asked the neighbors. I went to other neighbors, told them what I'm doing. They thought it was kind of fun. They're like, go for it. And they loved that I wanted to do it. I've got good neighbors. And we built the first vehicle. And then when I needed space to build the next vehicle, and I couldn't build at my house. I needed more space. So I went door knocking around the local neighborhood. And if you park a car in Japan, you have to park it within 2 kilometers of your house. So I had like a 2-kilometer circle drawn out, and I was just walking around, and I found this light commercial building area, and I just knocked on the door, the big red door, and in my limited Japanese, I was trying to explain what I wanted land for, and it was so lucky that we got this small. We just wanted a car park where we could build, make a bit of noise, and he just happened to have 2 car parks next to a small workshop kind of building, and he gave me a great price, and that's where we still are. We thought we would moved out by now, but we took more and more land around the same area, and now we're renovating it all and building upon it and putting in shifts and everything. So it's just like it's cool how if you maintain good relationships, like you can kind of keep building upon it and make something bigger and bigger. So, and it's a great relationship. This guy happens to speak English. He travels around in campervan himself. So it's very lucky just to show like just showing the passion of what we're trying to. I went in with a pitch deck, like, and it really worked with him. And I think leading with a pitch deck and like the passion and this is what we want to build, it can kind of really work wonders, because then that's why we got the land. He loved the concept, So
there you go. Bit of serendipity in there too. It sounds like, yeah. Well, why don't we shift into this last segment here, Jared? Crystal ball segment. As the name implies, we're looking towards the future. It's usually trends, predictions, so on and so forth. And it sounds like, the company itself, we've heard a bit about, like the path that it's on right now, where you're going, looking to shut down the rental side and focusing just on the manufacturing, and all are, marks of a successful business. So I'd kind of like to take this last question here, in a direction of like where the industry is going. Certainly we're looking at things like EVs now entering the market, and obviously that's going to change things up a little bit, down the line within, say, the next 5 years. Autonomous vehicles as well. I'd be curious about the chatter that you're picking up on and how that might affect, your business or present new opportunities.
Yeah, great question. I feel like the EV and autonomous driving capabilities on vehicles is going to have a profound effect on how people live in the future. If you juxtapose that with the fact that accommodation is so expensive in places like America and in Canada, UK, Australia, people can't afford to buy houses. They're saying, how are we ever going to afford to buy a place? And van life is an option for many of these young people now, where and when they try it out, they love it. And also, if you look at the grey nomads in America, like grandparents, your parents maybe, when they retire, what do? They buy a big RV and they go traveling around, right? So it's kind of, I don't want to get into my background's, my like ancestors are gypsies, right? So they've always kind of traveled that way and moved around that way, and it's a way of life that people love and enjoy. I'm not saying it's the only way, like for everybody, but like it's definitely a fun adventure kind of lifestyle. So I feel like EV, having a large battery, makes air conditioning easy, and more solar chargers or charging points means that air conditioning can kind of run from anywhere, and you can use the air conditioner which comes with a vehicle as well. Like it doesn't take that much of a draw of a Tesla's battery to run the air conditioning all night. So there's so much potential here. I feel like the big thing I'm seeing, which people aren't talking about, I feel, is that I feel like the payments for RVs are going to look more like mortgages in the future, where people will be taking out those kind of loans and insurance packages to have their primary residence in an RV motorhome. And that's kind of how we want to think when we're thinking about making products. The next step then is to think about where are you going to park it? What kind of like co-living, co-working relationships and different points could you do around that? A lot of this is like early dream drive stuff I had on the deck from like 5 years ago, which I've just been talking about the whole time. But I feel like we're moving towards, and that's the kind of a future on the products which I would like to focus on building towards in the future. And I also really feel like being able to make electric vehicles is kind of leveling the playing field a little bit. It's really hard now to do what Tesla's done, but it's definitely affecting the whole industry. And in the future, I believe that's going to get easier and easier to do. And and I feel there'll be a lot of different product opportunities. So yeah, we can't wait. We've built electric camper vans in the past. We've built a few based on Nissan ENV based vehicles. But yeah, we'd love to do more of that, do larger vehicles. And I think and build towards that future. So I feel it's going to become more of a way of life for more people. And if you package it with like schooling in different areas, there's ways we could envision to do this. And there's examples of it in the world now. If you look at canal boat systems in Europe, we have moorings and communities and different kind of repurposing what already exists in many places into like a new way of life. But I think it's really exciting what that's the possibilities from EV and autonomous driving. And
yeah, no doubt. And it's interesting how we're kind of circling back to how we started, like the Wikipedia definition, and it's attached to lifestyles that you just brought up, that point again, who knows, who knows where it's going to go. But these kind of hints that we're getting in other markets, or, some of the vehicles that are coming out right now are kind of giving up these like indications of where it could go. And it definitely does sound exciting, and most definitely exciting for a company like yours that's poised to really capitalize on all of it once the market's mature to that point. Sure. So yeah, this might be a nice point in the conversation to draw things to a close. But I've got to say, Jared, I mean, really, really insightful conversation. I can't thank you enough for all the insights that you shared today. I think people are really going to enjoy this, and hopefully go check out, what you offer. It's certainly got me hooked, and I'm sure quite a few others.
Thanks so much for making time, Christopher, and great to catch up like this. And hope to talk to you again in the future. So good.
Well, for those interested in learning more about Jared and his company, Dream Drive, you can check him out at his company website. You can also find him on platforms like LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and even has a YouTube channel as well. And for reference, all the links to these things that I'm speaking about will be in the show notes. And if you happen to like today's show, please be sure to tell a friend and share. You can also rate, review, and subscribe wherever you access your podcasts. And like I said, off the top, I would really, really appreciate you visiting the YouTube channel. I do have video portions of the conversation, kind of like highlights of the talk, and there'll also be some imagery associated with the talk itself in there. So you can head on over there, and if you do, a like or subscribe would be wholly, wholly appreciated. Finally, don't forget to tune into the next episode of Life as A, where we'll continue to explore and unearth the details of professions and the people behind them. I'm your host, Christopher Schoenwald. Until next time, stay curious about life and living.